Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and now it's France's turn to inspire the happy dance. After the success of the far-right National Rally Party in the European elections, Macron triggered domestic parliamentary elections 3 years early. Everyone thought he'd taken leave of his senses, but as I said at the time, he was clearly acting to try to stem what might otherwise have been an irresistible momentum leading to the far right not only capturing Parliament, but the presidency as well in 2027. So a gamble may have been, if so, it's paid off. For now anyway, the far right in both France and the UK, and no doubt elsewhere, are all complaining about an undemocratic stitch-up, like they always do when people vote tactically against them. But this was people using their votes to reject them where it most mattered. People take domestic elections more seriously than European ones, and there were actually reasonable grounds for optimism, as I described at the time. So although people are saying how surprising this result was, should they have been? Really? Should it be described as a shock? By far and away, the best source of optimism was the left wing uniting, even as they were denouncing Macron as a madman for triggering the elections. That's actually made them the largest bloc in the French parliament now. But they were immediately getting together to select a common pool of candidates. You know, straight away, there was no messing about. It was impressive. But France also had a couple of other advantages which may not have been immediately obvious to those on the outside. First, they've experienced a far-right fascist government about 80 years ago. They didn't like it. Well, most of them didn't like it. The founders of National Rally were quite keen, not so much most of France. And ever since, they've been used to voting tactically to keep them out. Not that they voted the last lot in. I discussed the time when, I remember the final presidential election runoff one year between Chirac and Le Pen Senior. The left were clear where their priorities lay. Vote for the crook, not the Nazi, they said. But the second round of voting is also a great idea. It allows you to vote according to what you'd like, then check the results. If those results show, as they did this time, you seem to be accidentally letting the fascists into power, then you get to adjust in the second round. People who got excited about, the way the polling was going, the results of the first round, should maybe have asked themselves, why do you think there's a second round? If not to change your votes to avoid a terrible outcome. It's a system which positively reminds you that tactical voting is a thing where necessary. Like, I think these guys are cool, I'm going to vote for them. Oh no, I've accidentally let the Nazis in. All right, I'll change my vote. And this is precisely what happened. Being clear, there's no love lost between the left and Macron centrists. Oh, they hate each other. But they both understood the real threat and worked to make sure people knew how to vote tactically to stop it. I mean, what's happened here, if you look at what's happened here, Macron's centrist party has taken heavy losses. The left have made gains. The far right have made gains as well, significant gains. But the left have made huge gains. They're now the largest bloc. So effectively what's happened is centrist voters have voted tactically for these left-wing candidates to stop the far right. And some left-wing voters will have voted for centrist candidates in other places as well. But the balance of power has been, the centre bloc has gone, we want to stop the far right, we will vote for the left. A rare truce, which will only have lasted for just long enough to stop the far right, but it worked. The turnout was much higher than at the last elections. In fact, the turnout was comparable, I think it's slightly below our general election last week. It was very similar though. And yet the French election is hailed as a stonking turnout. The UK one as a poor one. It's all relative, and relative to their usual turnout, it's both true. So we've gone from the right wing celebrating what they thought was going to be this fascist takeover of France, at least the domestic agenda, and are now crying about it, literally. I saw one of the usual suspects declaring, oh, France has fallen. In reality, the National Rally have still substantially increased their representation in Parliament, like I say. Macron's party have the biggest losses, but they're in second place. And that's the reason why Macron and his party are sort of cheering this. It's because the real purpose of these elections, yes, of course, they would have liked to have gained themselves and become this largest bloc and get the majority back and all the rest of it. But ultimately, the elections were to stop the fascists. That's why everyone's cheering, apart from the actual fascists. They wanted to stop that path over the next 3 years, that momentum building up that it was time for the far right to take over. They wanted to end that. The seats have changed quite a bit all round. Nobody's actually emerged as a winner. No one's going to get a majority. So no matter your politics, France clearly hasn't fallen because, you know, in one important respect, nothing has really changed. No party had a majority before these elections. Now, it is true there was sort of an alliance, and that's gone, and it's difficult to see how now one could form with the fragmentation of the seats as they are now. So, okay, the parliament has become a bit less stable. No obvious prospect of a coalition. The far right have made gains, the left have made gains by pooling their resources. Remains to be seen if they hold themselves together. You know, viewers in France have been telling me, no, they won't, Phil. And I believe you. But I'll just say they have the option. They have the option. And just like in so many countries, including the UK, the left wins when it works together. When it ignores those who want to spread nothing but division. In fact, when the exit poll was published, Twitter was awash with the hateful left immediately trying to stoke division over the results. And yet what happened was people voted tactically together. That's what's happened. You know, but there was no expression from these people of being pleased. There was no, oh, brilliant, France, well done, you've stopped the far right. No, it's all, right, let's use this to sow division. An opportunity to divide. It's sad. And it's the reason why the right wing wins so often in so many places. They're just better at being pragmatically allied than the left. The right have got more hate, but they're better at pooling it or even suppressing it when needed. Those on the left who want to sow division would do well to note that most of us don't hate. You'll never build a power base from the left on a foundation of hate and division. Not without a military takeover anyway, and they don't have the money or the brains for that. And the left in France are not going to build power again until they work together on a more long-term basis. So here's hoping, you know, strategically, not ideologically. But it is absolutely wonderful to see that France has actually held strong again, like they often do. Being clear, this entire mess is still of Macron's making, of course, as I've said enough times recently, because we've got our own focus in this country. Populism feeds on deprivation. The priority for any government opposed to populism: make sure your people do not suffer a fall in living standards. If something major happens, shield them as best you can. And then when you've weathered the storm, and that only ever takes a couple of years, prioritise a rise in living standards again. Macron did not do that. So this is his fault. But putting that to one side, he, just like those to his immediate right and to the left, ultimately recognise, as much as they don't like each other, they know that the danger, the real threat, is the far right. They are the enemy of France. The rest are just opponents, wanting the best but disagreeing on what the best is. And while they prioritise uniting against the fascists, however briefly, they will hold. Of course, the danger hasn't passed. Like I said, deadlock in Parliament, arguably worse in some ways. And Parliament can't be seen to be not functioning for 3 years, because otherwise the far right will say, well, we are your only option for a majority. So you'd bet if you want stable, like the Conservatives did. Like the Conservatives did just before Brexit, we are your only option for a stable government. You know, you might prefer Labour, but they cannot win a majority, only we can. That argument works. So it is now up to everyone in France opposed to the far right to stop that argument being made. And the way to stop it is raise living standards. Work together, raise living standards. Will Macron recognise that? If he does, will he work with the left to make it happen? Will they compromise to make it happen? It's up to them. I won't put it quite as simply as, you know, Labour in the UK now have the chance to put populism back in its box, because in the UK, Labour have that power. They don't have to work with others. They have got the power they need to do that. It's down to them to deliver. In France, we need people who don't really like each other, who've been extremely rude to one another, to work together, and they'll all need to compromise and step outside their comfort zone to focus on not making the great be the enemy of the good and all that. But they have the choice. They have the option. 3 years until the next elections. There's time if they want to use it. And maybe it won't happen. Maybe with the immediate danger past, there'll just be no reflection on how this was allowed to happen, this moment of peril, and what should be done to dial it down. Maybe the blame game starts again immediately with no prospect of working together as egos are refueled. But for now, until they make stupid choices, I can be optimistic. First the UK, now France have come together to vote pragmatically to stop the worst option. Over to you, America, for the hat trick. For those Americans who know what a hat trick is. For those who don't, it means don't let the orange one win. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.